guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Yes, we have Minnesota sports flowing in our veins, and we also have romance flowing in our brains, or our veins and brains. We have romance flowing in both after watching What Women Want for Rom-Com Rewind here. We're closing in on 100 total movie reviews, and this might be the last one until we go on hiatus for a while because we got Vikings training camp coming up, so Judd's viewing time is going to be spent at practice watching special teams drills. So it might
watching men sweat.
Yes. Which yes, you can find all that breakdown at the Purple Daily podcast and YouTube channel. But boys, we've got Action Movie Rewind, we've got Sports Movie Rewind, we've got Rom-Com Rewind, where we landed here today for What Women Want, the year 2000. A Mel Gibson classic. Let's just get right into it here. Nick Marshall gets a whole new outlook on life when a fluke accident gives him the ability to read women's minds. At first, this gift provides Nick with way too much information, but he begins to realize he can use it to good effect, especially when it comes to outwitting his new boss, Darcy McGuire, at the ad agency. 54% on Rotten Tomatoes. The critics' consensus says, even though Gibson is a good sport in his role, What Women Want is rather conventional, fluffy comedy romance that doesn't make good use of its premise. What use did you want to make? Was there supposed to be some higher meaning to this movie? I don't really.
I have a comment kind of on it later on that I might get to in a statement, but that is kind of a goofy way to put it, though.
Okay. $70 million budget, because there were some big, at the time of this movie, there was a couple big A-listers here, maybe more. $374 million at the box office. This was a huge blockbuster hit in 2000.
It did just fine, thank you very much.
Came out on my birthday, I believe, December 15th, right? If I remember looking up right.
Whoa.
I was 8 years old. Man. I did not see this in theaters, but I was 8 years old.
Mel Gibson, Helen Hunt, Lauren Holly, Marisa Tomei. I thought I saw a young Adrian Brody at one point working in the ad agency.
But the main woman in American Horror Story sagas, she's the assistant, I believe, that dates the European guy. I gotta look it up quick. Okay. You'll know the name once I say it.
Lauren
Holly. The gal, I said Lauren Holly.
Sarah Paulson.
Sarah Paulson.
Okay, yeah.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. And then there's the gal who plays the woman who was about to kill herself at the end. She's in every rom-com around this time, this early 2000s. So production notes, the biggest one I have here is that Mel Gibson was on top of the world around the time of this movie. He's coming off throughout the 90s, late 80s, 90s, 4 Lethal Weapon movies. He's coming off of The Patriot, also came out in 2000. So he had probably the two of the biggest movies of the year in 2000. And then Signs came out a year later, which was another great movie.
Love Signs.
Yep. So, and then Helen Hunt, man, she was also just 90s into the early 2000s. These are two major A-listers. Lauren Holly coming off Dumb and Dumber 4 years earlier.
Yeah. This is about 3 years after Twister, right? Twister was 97.
Yep, somewhere in there.
So she was banking it at that time.
So a lot going on here. Let's start with Judd here. We'll go around the room. Statements about What Women Want.
Okay, my first statement is on the two aforementioned main characters played by Helen Hunt and Mel Gibson. Nick and Darcy are both despicable people.
Wow.
Nick and Darcy are both very, very despicable. And they don't try and hide it, but it's sort of hard to root here because Nick, at the end, he fully admits that he took his power and basically abused it to steal Darcy's thunder. And Darcy, is talked about through the film as a mover and shaker herself, a shark, if you will. So this is two characters that were very deserved each other. And there weren't a lot of redeeming qualities to them because they both basically tried to further advanced things for them. And in Nick's case, he had, a pretty special power, and he used it just to make himself try and look good and to push Darcy out because he didn't trust her to start the film.
So, okay, you kind of like the second thing you just said there opens up a whole new can of topic, which we'll get to. But I definitely had notes about how Nick is a despicable, disgusting human. I don't know that I would say Darcy is also like, why do you think Darcy is a despicable human? What did she ever do in this movie that was like, oh my God?
Well, they had talked about her before the film, or before she appeared, and she was coming over from a company and talking about the fact that she had been a shark. Now, Nick might have been making that up, but like at the end where they're like going to get together still, and she says, well, I guess I'm going to have to fire you. But
of course you have to fire him.
Yeah, and break up with him.
Why would you even want to date him at that point?
But that's my point, though.
Like, he's a freaking chimney, dude. Like, I mean, like, it's
she's still gonna date him. I don't like either one of these. I actually, at that time, I did like both actors. I didn't like either one of the characters much. Because I mean, why would she be like even consider dating this guy when he just fessed up that he basically used your ideas before you could? Because he knew what they were.
How that whole premise, by the way, I don't know. How is it provable? Like so he stole her ideas that were in her head, right?
I thought that too. Yeah.
So if you're her, would you think that he stole your ideas, or would you think that you just work really well together and that you like have the same thoughts on ad strategy?
The end is very weird because it's almost like we have to wrap up this film. So, like, we're just going to leave these questions hanging because the film's done now. Go home. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Okay, there's so much. Let's keep going here. There's so much. Judd has opened up about 5 doors here. So, Dex, go ahead.
All right, my opening statement is I would hate this power. I'd absolutely hate it. There's not a single superpower, if you will, that I would want less than being able to hear people's thoughts and read people's minds. I would loathe it. I'd be so insecure. I would be hearing things I didn't even want to hear. Yeah. There's not a single superpower that I would want less in this entire world than being able to read people's minds. I know we've like kind of talked about superpowers before on 4 Question Fridays, I think, or just in passing, but in general, that idea, that whole premise, being able to control people and manipulate people because you're reading their minds, it freaks me out. And I'm too insecure also to know what people are thinking about me and they're talking behind my back. I would hate it. I'd absolutely hate it.
Yeah. I'm kind of that way when it comes to like, people like, what do they say behind your back or whatever? Like, I don't care first of all, I don't care. I also don't want to know.
Yeah.
If you're mad about something, go blow off some steam over there. I don't want to hear it. And then we can reconnect, whenever you're over it. Right. But Mike,
for one day though, like one day of that.
Okay. Let's have this conversation because I disagree with Declan. I don't know. I wouldn't want this like inundating me every single day.
Right. Agreed.
But I think, and I'll just move into my next statement. I think if you had the power, if you had the power to read women's minds, that's one thing. If you had the power to read everyone's minds, that opens up a whole new door. Because now it's like, how would you use that to your advantage? I feel like he used it very poorly to his advantage. He used it to like go one rung up in the company that he works in, right? He used it to like go from a director role to like the, vice president role or something. And then he used it to like get into some women's bedrooms that he could already probably get in anyways, by just doing his old thing. Is there a bigger play here that Nick was missing? Hey, you can read women's minds. Is there like could you become something bigger than just like the leader of the creative division of a smaller ad agency,
I think though, from the time that he got the ability by his foot was still in the bathtub and the hair dryer, or no, the hair dryer fell into the bathtub, which by the way, I think might kill you, but since it didn't kill him.
Well, that's why they didn't have him in the like submerged. Yeah. I think if he was submerged, you'd wonder like, well, why isn't he dead? But it was like, oh, it's just his foot. So maybe he's not dead. I don't know how that works.
I think when that took place initially, like he didn't know what to do and didn't like it at first. I will say this on a personal note. I think it was important in the film, at least as far as they were concerned when they wrote this, that he was able to curry favor with his daughter. Because like they were clearly very estranged and she had no respect for him. So like, I think the most productive thing he probably did was he could empathize with her. But yeah, as far as the corporate goes, you would think that he could have done a lot more.
Yeah, I'm thinking more, I guess, like professional, like personally awesome.
Yeah.
Like he mended fences with his daughter or whatever. You know, he like upped his dating life, which is great. But like, could he have taken better advantage of it professionally?
Yeah.
I think is my biggest question.
A random production note that we skipped over there. So his daughter plays the older version of excuse me, I'm butchering this. The HBO series The Last of Us, which just came out. It's based off a video game. It was a very popular show in the fall here in HBO. That daughter is Ellie's mom that you get to meet at the end of the series. And I was trying to figure out who she was, and I looked it up, and she's Ellie's mom that gives birth to Ellie, and then Ellie's immune from all these zombie apocalypse life that's going on, and that's the premise of The Last of Us. But I was trying to think for the life of me who that was too. It's, oh my God, it's Ellie from The Last of Us too, for those fans out there too.
Okay. Do you think, just real quick, back to the question here, all right, I know that Declan doesn't want this power, and I would feel like I kind of like, I don't know, this feels like almost too much, but if you had the power, how would you use it professionally? Like personally, there's only so many. You find a great woman or something, right? Like whatever. How would you use it professionally? How would you use it to like make money or gain professional status?
I would interview every GM in town and read their mind, and then use it for my advantage on scoops.
Okay.
I would be able to interview Derek Falvey and Bill Guerin and figure out what they're actually linking. What do they want to do?
Did you call on Paul Goldschmidt? Did you? Yeah.
I think that's one I could use professionally. Yeah.
I think if you're an actual boss in a company, I think it could be useful, especially for like trying to hire the right people. As an employee, I'm not sure. Like, I would just like the power for one day just to see what people think and stuff. But yeah, I'm with Declan. Like, I wouldn't want it in perpetuity because I think it would just clutter your mind beyond belief.
You're mad.
How would you manage it?
I think I would, I just got done watching like a week of the World Series of Poker $10,000 main event where the winner won $12 million. I think I would go just play in the $10,000 World Series of Poker main event because you would essentially know what everyone's cards are, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you could only read the women's minds, then there's only like 5% of the players are women. So you'd have to find, some other way. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like, I think Nick should have thought bigger, maybe.
I think Nick is, at the end of the day, an incredibly simple guy. Like, there was a lot that indicated that he was sort of the Riggs character without the aggressiveness.
He was. Yeah, he was like a corporate Riggs or something.
Yeah, he's just playing sort of Mel at that time. Or I should say certain Mel characters, because he was actually in some good films in which he played much deeper roles.
Yeah. Back
to me?
Yes.
There's a common theme here that I feel like our films, because they're all from around the same, or many of them are from around the same era. But the common theme is this. Marisa Tomei is an absolute jewel. Mm-hmm. Marisa Tomei makes every film that she is in, big parts and small, better. She was great again. And it's not that the role is huge, but she plays that sort of spurned gal / girlfriend so well. And it's funny. And she had the full arsenal of acting ability that I thought was just fantastic. I would argue that in this era, and she made a lot of coins, but Helen Hunt was sort of a one-trick pony. She always sort of just played herself.
Helen Hunt.
Yeah, which is fine, but I mean, she's sort of boring at times. Marisa Tomei is the exact opposite. Never boring, hilarious. I just thought that she was an absolute a queen of this era of films when she appeared in them.
But here's on Helen Hunt for a second, because I just pulled up her list of movies too. So she had a crazy run. You see how this budget got so bloated. So she was Twister, like Judd said, in 1996. As Good as It Gets with Jack Nicholson in 1997.
Yep.
And then, let's see here. Then she didn't act for a few years. Castaway and Pay It Forward in 2000, plus What Women Want. So all those in the year 2000.
That's why she could basically retire.
And so from that point forward, she was in other stuff too. But boy, that's like that's a really crazy run of 4 big time blockbuster movies.
Yep.
And yeah, Marisa Tomei,
Love Marisa.
it kind of
Tomei.
feels like she's always in like either the really good sort of B level movie, or she's like the C star in an A level movie, right?
Yes, and she's perfect at it.
Yep.
She embraces it.
And she's been in other stuff too that's bigger, but yeah, she's pretty excellent. All right, back to Declan.
All right, I feel like my statement was there is some unnecessary physical humor in this movie. There are times,
dude, yes.
There are times that Mel Gibson is trying to play Chevy Chase, and it was really confusing for me to watch. That whole bathroom scene, which I know gives him eventually the power, but he's tripping on pearls and he's tripping on things, and the nylons don't fit. He's trying to be Chevy Chase, and this movie it has nothing to do with being physical humor. It's just supposed to be, this ad agency guy who can read women's minds and manipulates it. There's like then this weird theme of this movie that they want him to be Chevy Chase, and only like Chevy Chase and Chris Farley and Jim Carrey, like that is a very specific breed of acting, and it's great. Steve Martin too, but I have no idea why for parts of this film they tried to make Mel Gibson into Chevy Chase, and it was very confusing to me.
Yeah, well then there was that creepy, and I guess this kind of blends into one of my statements, which is Nick was just really creepy for the first 3/4 of this movie.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Because there was that one physical comedy scene where he spills coffee on that woman's shirt or blouse, and then he like starts to wipe it off her.
Yeah.
And then, of course, instead, like if you would never put that in a movie in 2023, it's kind of amazing how fast times have changed. But even it was just like, I don't know, he's not. I don't think of Mel Gibson as being like that type of actor, but I actually thought he played it off pretty well. This might have been one of the more like wide-ranging roles that he was ever asked to play in his career, from having to be like misogynistic to then being empathetic, and all the physical comedy and all this stuff. On the creepy front, God, my list includes spilling coffee on the gal's shirt and then wiping it off and copping a feel. He like squeezes her and she like laughs and kind of he tells the chubby gal to stop eating the donut as he's walking by. Like, maybe you shouldn't.
Maybe not.
And then he's at the coffee shop, and then we find out later that Marisa Tomei actually really did want to go out on a date with him, but like before he could read her mind, she tells him no like 100 times, and then he grabs her hand and like forces her to say yes to go on a date with him.
Yeah, that's
just like,
that'd probably be an issue.
Yeah, I wrote down this film would not fly in 2020 plus culture. This would not even 2020. The last 6-7 years of culture would not fly in today's type of cinema.
And even just like the whole premise of, oh my God, there's a woman that's going to be in charge of this department. Oh God, and then making all the wisecracks about whatever.
Do we have a list of who was up for the character of Nick besides Mel?
I don't see anything.
Because Dex is right. You know who at this time would have been a prime candidate? Jim Carrey. Like Chevy Chase by that point's too old. Yeah. But Jim Carrey was doing a ton around then, and he could have been a candidate.
I think the problem with Jim Carrey at the time is I don't think you could take him seriously as like a romantic partner in a movie. I
agree. I think
he was too much of a goofball in the late 90s.
Yeah, it depends on how he played. Because I mean his ability to at that time turn on a dime for characters was really impressive.
Like Mike Myers, was big with Austin Powers around this time, but
Mike Myers wouldn't have flown. No.
That wouldn't have worked.
No, because Mike Myers doesn't play enough. Like Jim Carrey is so good that he can actually transform himself. Mike Myers, no chance.
No.
Chevy Chase, too old.
Yeah. Steve Martin, too old.
Yeah,
it just wouldn't work. I should say. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, we should mention too, unless maybe you guys did and I just didn't hear it, but Alan Alda was in this movie, and he was one of the stars of MASH, one of the all-time popular TV shows.
Yep.
In the 70s and 80s.
In fact, my mom went to high school with him.
Really?
They're the same age. Well, she's dead now, but they were the same age.
Wow.
Yes, in California, they were high school classmates and friends, I guess, too.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's a great fact.
Yeah, I think MASH is still the most watched non-sports TV event, right?
I don't think it'll be eclipsed because at that time cable was around, but it wasn't prevalent yet. So I don't think it'll be.
Didn't Seinfeld's finale come close? Wasn't that second? I think. I think
very
that
possible.
was yeah. I remember that and
But
MASH.
yeah, that last MASH, which is a real interesting episode, a real downer. But yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, and then we haven't met like in terms of cast. Bette Midler was the like psychiatrist or whatever that.
Oh, I forgot. I didn't know that was her. God,
Bette Midler was in this movie.
I didn't think of that. So my next statement is this film for its obvious flaws is absolutely genius though, because this proves what happens when you put an all-star cast with what was probably at the end of the day a mediocre script. Like this film has a ton of flaws. This film, again, the ending does not make any sense. They just basically decided to end it. But the investment in the cast, which was huge, was the sole reason why they doubled or tripled it with what they made off this thing.
They went 5x on the budget.
Okay, five times, because this was an absolute genius of, you know what? Script's okay. It's not great. It's not the worst script, but we are going to get the cast. We're going to pay the cast whatever we have to make sure that this works. Because there's a lot of actors at that time that they could have gone with who wouldn't have been train wrecks, but I guarantee you would not have got the same response from the audience that this did.
Let's talk about the script for a second, because and not that any of us are like, we try to pretend we know what we're talking about when it comes to scripts and whatever, but this was a classic example, I think, of the movie starts with a premise.
Yep.
And then it goes from there. Like there's all kinds of movies like this. I'm just off the top of my head. When I was a kid, I remember that Rookie of the Year movie where.
Oh yeah.
We should do that at some point.
We should do that.
The premise is, hey, a 10-year-old kid gets a bionic arm and pitches in the major leagues. Yeah, wouldn't that be crazy if a kid, or maybe the premise is a kid pitches in the major leagues.
Right.
And then you got to figure out from there. You're like kind of reverse engineering the script, right? Okay, well, how does he throw hard enough? Okay, he gets a bionic arm. Well, how does he get a bionic arm? Well, I don't know. He like breaks his arm and it's like all of a sudden it's a robotic arm, right? This was that kind of movie, right? Someone woke up in the middle of the night and was like, what if a man could read women's minds for like a week? Mm-hmm. And then it's like, well, how would that happen? Was he born with it? No, because it'd have to be a guy that like stumbles into it in some way, right? Yeah. Well, how would it happen? And they came up with, what if he got kind of electrocuted in the bathtub and it sparked something in his brain, right? Like
that's where I got lost though.
Yeah.
Like of all the ways,
that'll be what happens. It'll be great. Yeah, that's fine, huh?
It would have been more like plausible in a fictional film if like he had been befriended by, because he was not good to his girlfriends and women in general. It would have been more plausible to have like a guy outside a bar say, "I can give you a gift" or something, like
a genie or something.
Yeah, like a genie, as opposed to I'm gonna barely get out of the bathtub, but not get out fully, and I'm going to be.
So you would have rather them. They were walking the line of like what's believable and not, obviously, because not walking the line, they had crossed the line. It's like, oh, a man could be one. You'd rather them go all the way and be like,
yes,
just have some like street vendor guy that has magical powers give it to him.
Just go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that.
All right, let's kind of continue down this path too, because as I progress through the film, and I understand it kind of ruins a little bit of the plot, but I don't think the mind reading part is necessary in this film. Like, I kind of would have rather just saw Mel Gibson being this womanizer guy working at an ad agency who has a woman boss come in and then he's trying to woo her. Like, I don't know. I can't provide necessarily what the solution would be if he couldn't read people's minds or women's minds, but I don't think it was necessary. Like,
really?
I would have rather.
But dude, it is literally the whole, like, every laugh in the movie is because of it, right? Pretty much.
But I would have rather liked and enjoyed a movie where it's just him trying, as this big bravado guy, trying to pursue her and trying to figure out who she is and what she's like. I really just thought at the end of the day, the mind reading part is not necessary in this movie. Probably.
So what would, okay, all right, Declan. So what would Hollywood director, writer Declan, you're going to, all right, what is your elevator pitch for this movie to, Paramount Pictures? You got 30 seconds in an elevator. and it's not going to be Mel Gibson reads women's minds. What is the pitch?
All right, so Mel Gibson is a hotshot womanizer who works at an ad agency, and he gets a new boss that comes in, and every single time he's trying to woo her, she figures out a new wrinkle that he is just a piece of crap womanizer, and then she eventually starts falling in love with him. That's probably what I would have said.
I don't think that gets greenlit by Paramount in the elevator,
that's fine.
man.
I think
That's
it's been
totally
done
okay.
before.
Yeah.
And then Judd comes in and says, scrap that idea. What if Mel Gibson for a week can read women's minds cold, everything they're thinking?
Yeah. And now they're like, yes, Paramount, greenlight it.
Yeah. But that's also like the marketing hook to the movie, right?
Yes.
Hey,
Yes.
everyone, Mel Gibson can read everyone's minds.
Right.
It's going to be, what's he going to stumble into?
And it probably just by default, because of how it was structured, it became a big time date night film, right? Because it's like the guys will think it's funny and the women will think it's really funny. And so, yeah, I think if you just stripped it away and sort of Clooney-ized it at the time.
There we go. Clooney.
Yeah.
Yes.
Clooney, I don't like, I'm
Good
sure it
word.
does okay, but then it just loses the whole.
I feel like there's a bunch of like Clooney failed rom-coms because there's no hook.
true.
It's just like George
What was
Clooney.
the one he did was it with Meg Ryan? Clooney did. Dawn and I went to see it in the theater in the
Let's
early
look it up. I gotta look it
2000s.
up.
George
He did
did a
one with
movie.
J-Lo, I think.
Yeah, no, this was not. No, because Dawn has a crush on Clooney, and I think it was a Meg Ryan film.
Let's see.
Definitely
here.
was
Let's pull
not-
up his.
I don't remember J-Lo.
All right, George Clooney filmography. He did that Up in the Air movie. Was really
Love that. movie.
Great. Anna Kendrick is
Great
so good in that.
movie.
Yeah.
She is.
good. Okay,
money.
so I'm just gonna read through some George Clooney movies here. Out of
All right.
Sight. What was that one? That was like kind of a thriller,
Okay.
crime comedy kind of a thing.
Judd, there's one where he did with Michelle Pfeiffer in 90.
Michelle Pfeiffer. Thank you.
One
That's
Fine
okay.
Day.
One Fine
One-
Day. Yes.
One
Dawn and I
Fine
went to see
Day.
that in the theater.
Okay,
What year was that?
96.
that was 96.
Oh God, see, I'm getting 2000.
And then
I
he
can't
did
keep
the
track anymore.
Peacemaker with Nicole Kidman in 1997. He did a bunch of stuff, but again, these are all like forgettable, sort of like
Yeah.
it's like there's like a romance story, but none of them have the pizzazz of.
Well, no, it's just because he was.
Dude, George Clooney would
So
have been
good-looking.
great in this movie. If
Yeah,
you replace Mel
there we go.
Gibson with George
Yeah.
Clooney,
Yeah.
I like it a lot more.
Except I don't think he would have agreed to trip on marbles and electrocute himself.
you don't think his agent would have drawn a line there? And
I
said,
think he
"Oh,
would have
my
been like,
guy,
"That's not how George. That's
he's
not
a
how
more
George
smooth than
acts."
that."
Yeah,
Some bartender
George-
pours him a whiskey neat, and he takes too many of it, and then too much of it, and then all of a sudden he can just read people's minds.
something. You know
Yeah,
what?
you get to that sweet spot of drunk.
That's a
like,
better
Yeah.
idea than what we got.
Yes.
I'm with you on this. How they got there, I didn't like.
Yeah. All right. My next statement is this era of movies and TV shows loved to glorify working at ad agencies.
Oh, yes, I have a statement on this.
Dude, you had What Women Want. You had How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. You had Mad Men coming out a few years after this. I think that was like maybe 5 or 6 years after this. You know, you had, and even in this movie, it's just like the ultimate ode to like a guy working atop an ad agency. It's probably what helped subliminally put me into like wanting to go to ad copywriting school.
Friday happy hour.
Yeah, we're drinking. We got our whiskey in the office. We're
Yeah.
womanizing.
Oh my
we
God.
got
It was sort of
Frank
an-
Sinatra playing in the living room. It's guys
it was-
smoking
it-
cigarettes.
Was very much an ode to, and I mean, capped off brilliantly by Mad Men. It was very much an ode to the 60s.
Yeah,
Because you're right. It was all about the 60s.
the glory days. Yeah, let's get in. Let's make the big pitch to the big company. You know,
Misogynistic too, which is, the 60s. Yeah.
Yep, totally.
That's a great call.
Just
Great
and there's
call.
probably other ones too, like just ad agency themed movies and stuff. But it was just like if you had any aspirations to work at an ad agency, these movies and TV shows just put gas on the fire. Right. Any other statements from you guys?
I got one more. And so when his daughter goes to prom and she's upset because the boyfriend thinks that they are going to consummate the relationship and then she doesn't want to and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I would guess that the price of your high school prom being at the Drake would put said high school out of business. So I'm curious how many high schools have rented, and correct me if I'm wrong here, folks, in Chicago, but I saw that like extravagant, prom at the Drake main ballroom. The Drake is or at least then was an elite hotel in downtown Chicago. I mean, ordinarily, aren't high school proms lots of times at the high school?
Well, not necessarily. No, not in cities, not in big
Not
cities.
not Buffalo High School.
Well-
No, we splurged for the Earl Brown Entertainment Center.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway,
Like
it occurred to me.
I had two. We rotated at least. Now it's not the case anymore, but we rotated between the Landmark Center and the River Center every other year at my high school. And then a lot of other ones, we had a family friend who just graduated from high school. They did theirs at MOA. It was at Mall of America in the park, like in Camp Snoopy, if you will. That's where
the
their
prom was?
Yes.
Like music and everything?
Yes. And then even Target Field's been in one too. They use the Legends Club as a prom site.
Well, they're always trying to rent that out. And the Vikings are too. They're both in competition for like events, weddings, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Be kind of cool, dude.
Yeah,
Your prom at a stadium.
Yeah.
The Drake would be very, very pricey.
It is weird that Phil brought up the How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days part, because I feel like this laid a lot of precursors to that movie, like laid the groundwork to, because I wrote that down verbatim. It's like, this feels like a prequel kind of to How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days with a couple ad agency stuff that's just linked in.
The guy the swashbuckling guy that's cocky and everyone eats out of his hand, the womanizer who needs to change.
The chemistry in that film was so good, I thought, compared to this.
I don't know. Well, that's kind of a spoiler alert, I guess, for the next category. Do you guys have any other before we get? Well, we can get to that category right now. You good?
Dex?
I'm good. Yep, I'm all right.
Trying to see. I think I'm good too. Here. Before we get to the ranking categories here on Movie Rewind with Mackie and Judd, a shout out to our friends who are helping us enjoy summertime on the lake, Power Lodge and Miller Marine. There are 3 Power Lodge locations in the state of Minnesota, and there's one Miller Marine in St. Cloud, and all of them have glorious pontoons for you to enjoy the summer months on the lake. We call it throttle therapy around here, Judd.
We do indeed. And look at this. If you are watching right now, jumping into the water on a gorgeous summer day. And remember, summer, yeah, the 4th of July is gone, but plenty of time left. August, September, some of the best months to get out on the lake. And what better way to do it than with or in a Bennington as you enjoy the time before football season starts.
Go to powerlodge.com or millermarine.com to check out their selection. Also, hey, it's still not too late to lose some weight and feel better about yourself this summertime. Livia is helping a lot of SKOR North listeners do just that.
Yep. And in fact, it started with me a couple of years back when I joined, dropped 40 pounds. The most important thing is not only are the folks, the nutritionists and dietitians at Livia going to help you drop that weight, but they're going to help you keep that weight off. They're going to be with you every step of the way, and they are going to help you take the weight off. So all of those clothes that perhaps don't fit now, guess what? They're going to fit. And join today. You're going to get 50% off your personalized program. You can lose up to 10 pounds or more in your first 2 weeks. Imagine that, 2 weeks in, and you are down 10 pounds or more. And now the weight is starting to come off. And the best part, as I said, is it's going to stay off. You're absolutely going to love it. Voted Minnesota's best weight loss program year after year. 855-GO-LIVIA, livia.com, LIVEA.com. Livia days have arrived. Take advantage.
All right, boys, we got 2 categories here. That's the wrong button. That's right next to this button.
We've been struggling today with the buttons.
That's 2 for me today.
I've never seen you miss 2.
I know. I think I was getting cocky. Like I can do it no look sometimes now because I'm getting used to this new setup.
Oh, okay.
And so but what happened was, so I had it on the right one, but it must have drifted when I went for my ad copy. But anyways, so the first category is the definitive relationship rankings here. So we've done, I think, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We've done like 16. This is our 17th rom-com we've done. And to this point, Jacob and Cal from Crazy Stupid Love are the couple. It's kind of an unorthodox because they're like the buddies in the movie, but that's the main relationship in the movie. That's the only perfect 10 that we've given out collectively. So the criteria is chemistry between the 2 main characters, the main relationship. Hitch and Sarah from Hitch are an 8.8. And then 3 tied for third place, Noah and Allie from The Notebook, Joe Fox and Kathleen Kelly from You've Got Mail, and Benjamin Barry and Andy Anderson from the aforementioned How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. The couples with the least amount of chemistry, Michael and Jules from My Best Friend's Wedding are a 2.7.
Despicable people again.
Kirk and Molly from She's Out of My League, Jerry and Dorothy from Jerry Maguire, and then Sam and Annie from Sleepless in Seattle. So how would you rate Nick and Darcy's chemistry on a 1 to 10 scale for this movie?
What did Jerry and Dorothy, what did they get as a cumulative score?
A
Can I ask
3.
that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to give them a 3 as well. Then I think it's the same exact thing.
Really?
I think it's the same exact thing. And I would even argue that the relationships felt similar in the fact that they were sort of, it sort of felt forced. I'm giving them a 3. I did not enjoy their chemistry, which How to Lose a 10 Guy in 10 Days, I thought did a good job with.
So again, this is where my big problem with this movie kicks in. He can read her mind. So like I have a hard time judging their chemistry if he knows her thoughts. Like how do we seriously really draw this up 1 through 10 if he can read her mind?
I like where you're going.
It's difficult.
I think you're overthinking it.
I am
I
not.
sort of like
I'm not.
His ability to read her mind plays into whether or not he has chemistry. So
But that means you could have chemistry with anyone if you could read their mind.
But Judd's saying, despite the fact that he can read her mind,
that's Judd.
I still don't
chemistry still.
I still don't think it worked great.
Judge.
I still don't think it worked great.
For me, I'm gonna give it a 5 because it's just I can't really give it. It's not perfect and it's not one of the best ones we've done, and I don't think it's certainly not as bad as Jerry Maguire. It's not as bad as My Best Friend's Wedding. I have a soft spot for She's Out of My League, but I would give it a 5 because I think that's only as fair as I can do it if he can read her mind.
Yeah, it's a 6 for me. So I guess I'm the highest, but I'm also not. The more we talk about like George Clooney, I think George Clooney would have found a way to make this a 9 between those two.
I think you're
yes.
right.
You know, even the way that she
exactly.
she kind of looks at him the entire movie like he's an alien.
Yeah.
You
She
know,
doesn't
she's
trust
like,
him. She clearly doesn't trust him.
yeah.
And then it turns out she had reason not to trust him.
And even just like, so there's like the character chemistry, but then there's just like the actor-actress chemistry.
Right.
And it kind of felt like Mel Gibson was playing Mel Gibson and Helen Hunt was playing Helen Hunt, and they like merged together in some scenes. That's kind of how it felt to me.
And part of what I like is just to go back to one of my statements. At this point in time, Marisa Tomei's character, I thought had, and it could be combative, but had good chemistry with the actor. Like her and Carell are hilarious, I thought. And now she hates him supposedly, but I think that if you go back and look at this run for Helen Hunt and Phil, like you said, it's pretty impressive. I don't know that there was one where I'm like, oh my God, the chemistry was good. Because Twister, I didn't like. The tornadoes were cool at the time, but the chemistry's not great.
You know, maybe
Bill Pullman, right?
She's just kind of a lone ranger, maybe. You know, maybe she's just a little
well,
bit
actually,
of a, I don't know.
Actually, it's funny. It felt like what they were trying to do continually, and I don't think it worked on the big screen, but it worked on the small screen okay, was in Mad About You, her and Paul Reiser were believable, but I don't know that we ever got that in a film.
Yeah, that's a good point about the TV show. I guess I had, because that's also how she's like.
That's the launching pad.
Yeah, just the 90s kind of started with that for her.
I think it was on after Seinfeld, right, or before Seinfeld.
I don't remember that specifically.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it did well.
Those were more like adult targeted TV shows, and I was a kid looking for Full House and Step by Step. But that makes it a 4.7 out of 10. So it's just ahead of President Shepard and Sidney Ellen Wade from The American President, and just behind Melanie and Redneck Jake from Sweet Home Alabama. So
yeah, that's another one.
And that brings us to the overall entertainment value of this movie on a 1 to 10 scale. The only perfect 10 we have in the rom-com department is Crazy Stupid Love, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Hitch, and 10 Things I Hate About You, all a 9 or above. At the very bottom, the lowest score we've given out is a 5.3, tied between My Best Friend's Wedding and The American President, Sweet Home Alabama, and She's Out of My League, and Fever Pitch, all below a 6.5. So those are the worst. 1 to 10 scale, how entertaining was this movie?
You know what? So I've ripped it quite a bit, but I'm going to go back to what I thought was the most important thing, which is the casting is really good. So like, yeah, the film doesn't necessarily make sense, but it's not like, oh my God, this film sucks. I'm going to give it a 7. I thought it was entertaining. I thought it was like, as far as a mindless film goes, it didn't ask a lot, but the fact that they paid so much in casting clearly paid off, because it wasn't like, oh my God, the acting sucks. It didn't suck. I'm going to give it a 7 for a sort of late 1990s, early aughts like film.
Yeah.
It's a 5 for me.
Wow.
It's not a painful one to get through, but I didn't really find myself loving this movie. I would not stop and rewatch this movie. That is
Really?
that is a change the channel, keep
I actually
surfing
might
on the
stop
guy.
on this one once in a while.
Chilling at
depending
the
on my mood.
chilling at the Holiday Inn, with killing some time before dinner. No, I'm not stopping.
Stay on Holiday Inn, huh?
What women want, or wherever, Motel 6.
Holiday Inn.
But yeah, 5. It's a 5. It's a 5 out of 10 for me. Again, I have a problem with the major point of this movie, so I can't really get by all the way into it. So it's a 5.
I want to know what you would give if you could watch the version of the movie that you pitched
You'd
earlier.
give it a-
What you
we
would
wouldn't be
give.
doing
It's
it.
a 9 for sure.
It's a great film. This one scene.
So this is definitely a stop and watch movie for me. I this movie is super far out there, but I really like this movie. It's an 8 for me. I can't put it on the level of like Forgetting Sarah Marshall or Hitch or How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. It's not on the like Mount Rushmore level, but I love this movie, flaws and all. So with that, it's a 6.7 average score between us, tying it with 50 First Dates and just behind Sleepless in Seattle and While You Were Sleeping. So
That's fair.
there you go.
I think that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think part of Dex, your bias, which I totally get, is you were what, 7 at this point in time?
I just turned 8.
Okay, so you had just turned 8. So like this film at that time sort of was reflective of films then too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like
can
if you
see what
compare it to
you mean.
films now, it's
Right.
probably a 4 or 5. But if you compare it to that time, it's solid. So yeah, I think Phil and I are probably a little bit more sympathetic to the era in which it was shot, which was at a sort of a different time.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I think, and for now, just because Vikings training camp is going to take up a lot of our time and chunks of our Friday shows, we are going to put movie rewind or movie reviews, I should say, with Mackie and Judd on the shelf for now. We may bring it back at some point before the end of the year. We'll keep taking your suggestions for movies. A lot of people have wanted us to do just straight up comedy movies. Like there's a lot of great just 90s and early 2000s, think about the Will Ferrell comedies and
Right.
that would open up a really wide new avenue for us. And I think part of the charm of the genres we've chosen is we get to kind of poke fun at these movies.
Yep.
You can't really like poke fun at The Hangover,
Right.
right? Because it's poking fun at itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
So
fact
I
we
don't
even
know.
did like Sarah Marshall, like that was even like, oh, is this too good of a movie for us to do? Even that falls into that same vein as well.
Yeah, so we'll have to take it into consideration if there's other genres that we can branch out into. But there's still a lot of meat on the bone of action movies and sports movies and rom-coms. So keep the suggestions coming in those 3 categories. And we'll be back at some point with more movie reviews with Mackie and Judd.